Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for reaching out to us to share our experience, because we at least by ourselves think that it's quite valuable and could help early career researchers to be more involved in those services and also gain from being there involved in those services. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so maybe first we introduce ourselves to anyone who doesn't know us. My name is Mojtaba. I recently joined, in September, actually, mid-September. I started my job at the University of Surrey in the UK as a lecturer or assistant professor. Krzysztof?
Hi, I'm Krzysztof. I'm now lecturer at Center for Mathematical Cognition at Loughborough University in the UK. Yeah, it's also, recently, but it's almost 2 years of COVID that I have been here. So that's me.
Okay, today we are going to share some of our experiences and some information about what's in the special issue that we co-edited for the Journal of Numerical Cognition. So here is the agenda for today. We walked through a little bit about background story, so where we started and what was the journey that we had, and then we give you some information about like publications and papers inside that special issue, and also all those open science practices that we try to implement there. And then discussing shortly about whether it's worth to be involved with different roles as author, reviewer, or editor into a special issue, and then finally giving some tips based on our experience in this special issue. Okay, a little bit about background. So basically everything really started in a coffee break that we had back in Tübingen when both of us were doing our postdoc there in the lab led by Hans-Christoph Nürk. Basically, we met—
Who is also here, by the way. Hi, Hatze.
Oh, that's here. Great.
Hi.
So basically, we met, I would say, regularly, every single day. To some people, that might seem like wasting time when you're at work, just meeting again in the afternoon. But it was very, very fruitful, honestly, for us. It ended up with some of our papers, which are out now. So we developed some ideas and we decided to, let's do this experiment, let's do that. And we were chatting about like our analysis. It happened to me, honestly, that I reanalyzed some of my data sets to see, to be on the correct track. So it's quite useful, I would say, if you can manage to have those coffee break meetings and brainstorming. So it was in one of those coffee breaks that we developed the idea, and we said, yeah, that's worth contacting the journal, our journal, basically, because we felt belonging to the society, and ask whether there's a room for that special issue. So what did we do? We prepared a letter for John Toes, who was at the time the editor-in-chief of the journal. So we prepared a letter, we attached our CV, and then we wrote about the importance of replication, which has been taken in other fields, so we refer to them, and then ask whether there is a possibility for us to initiate that special issue in the Journal of the Society. So he discussed with the board, and he came to us with good news, but asking, it was a kind of revision process for a paper. So he asked for or they basically asked, the committee asked for some major revision. We did it, we submitted the letter once again. They asked once more for changes, we did, and finally we got acceptance to announce it. So we went on social media and asked people whether they are keen to contribute. And as you see, here is the poll for that we had on that time, May 2019, asking people, and it was quite promising. So about like 15 people said absolutely, and then about like 17 people said maybe. So we were like, okay, we will have a decent number of papers there. And then later we announced it in MCLS in Ottawa. This is the journey that we had to Niagara Falls. Okay, so this was our time plan that initially we decided to have for the special issue. First, we decided to have to ask people to submit some the abstract of their work. There, I remember, if I'm not wrong, we somehow not rejecting but recommending one paper to not submit because it was not really relevant here. And then we planned like that. We got the agreement from the journal and we went on. But of course, we couldn't stick to the time plan because of different reasons. So the first reason was COVID, which was really influential. And the second was somehow personal and professional, because, for example, in 2020, Krzysztof moved from Germany to UK to start his new post. And there was a kind of delay. And then later in 2021, I moved from Canada to the UK, and there was again another delay because of those transitions. And of course, journal also pushed it a little bit back, but altogether, if you're planning later in a special issue, you have to keep it in mind to leave some, space for those kinds of delays. So what did we do? We started to centralize everything, basically. We made an OSF project, and we tried to document everything there because as open science advocate, and also like based on our experience, we would definitely expect it to forget many details. So we started to centralize everything, drafted everything, all the letters that we wanted to share with people. So we made an inclusive document, for example, which is like 5 pages detailing everything that people need to consider when they are going to submit their work to this special issue. And we received some feedback, some question, and we developed that. We included those points. So I don't go through those details, but Krzysztof will mention them later. And then we also had a private folder there for ourselves because we wanted to be on the same page in our communication with people, because in the end, some of the papers were handled by me and some by Krzysztof. So we wanted to have some sort of, similar message to the people that we are communicating. For example, the letter that we wanted to send to reviewers, to not forgetting, because later you will see that there are many things that we wanted to implement there. And you could easily forget something if you are going to draft it every time. So we centralized, we put everything there, try to just make a copy paste, from the document there, and just changing the name to have everything in place. These are some practical tips that might help if you're planning to have a special issue. So I will hand it over to Krzysztof, who will give you some information about the content of the special issue.
Yeah, so yeah, that was also very big question mark at the beginning with the how many papers we get and so on, and what kind of papers we get. And then if you, Mojtaba, can show the next slide. We ended up with 12 replication papers, which is, I think, quite quite good. And also, I think when it comes to like extent of work, it's like a fair, let's say, volume of the special issue to handle. And then we contacted authors of all of these replication papers, of the papers that have been replicated here. And we asked them to make a commentary, to write a commentary. Out of this, it worked with 3 authors of original contributions who kindly agreed to write such commentaries. So we have the 3 commentaries that like supplement the 12 replication papers, and there is an editorial that we too wrote. What is unfortunately not there, even though we tried, and that was also like something we were really hoping to have, our registered replication reports. So we were hoping that maybe we managed to have some of these, but like one group was actually considering it. We were encouraging them as much as we could, but there were some both personal and COVID issues in this group that they in the end did not submit the paper in the end. So we couldn't host a registered replication report, unfortunately. So that's the overview. And then if you could show the next one. So this is the figure that we made for the editorial. And what is nice here is that there was like almost an equal share of studies testing adults and children. As you can see in the upper part, that's kind of nice. We were also thinking of like one of the actually rounds of feedback from John that Mojtaba told was that like replication is like too generic and we should maybe kind of specify it and so on. And then we thought of this being like sounding specific, but being broad enough that we have enough contributions. So we had this direct and conceptual replications, which means in the end that there is like both types of replications that are mentioned in general. They were both included, but it sounded more specific. So that was the trick. And there we had like much more conceptual ones than the direct ones. And there was also like few studies that we couldn't classify like properly here because it was to some point conceptual, but also like not directed at a specific paper. For instance, in one case, it was a paper like replicating the effect sizes reported in meta-analysis, and I think in the other, and there were 2 such papers, like looking at like replicating effect sizes that were reported already in meta-analysis before. So we called it like conceptual with the hash mark. And then what did happen? So in the end, most effects like have been replicated at least partially, and there were a few like non-replications, as you can see. And when it comes to effect sizes, we have like let's say fair spectrum of what we could have. So the comparable effect sizes to the original studies. In some studies, the effect sizes were smaller. Sometimes when there were like failed replications, there were like no effects. So kind of like smaller to the degree that they did not exist at all. And in some, we couldn't really find the like effect sizes to be compared. Which kind of reflects what people normally report in replications, that usually the effect sizes reported in replications are at like, they are rarely larger than the ones from original studies. They are either comparable or a bit smaller. Yeah, that's it. Like more details in the special issue itself. We have nice table summarizing the results if anyone wishes to have a look. Yeah, next one. And about this open science practices that Mojtaba mentioned. So we wanted to do more than the JNC required from the authors at the time. So we kind of emphasized the open science principles with the with the mandatory data sharing, unless there were like serious ethical constraints on that. And then we had some ideas on sharing the synthetic data, or for instance, on like more careful visualization where like all the data points are visible. we asked the reviewers to double check whether this is kind of really followed within the submissions. We were also checking it ourselves. So that was kind of, yeah, well, extra feature, but also these extra features kind of translate to extra work. Sometimes it's a bit more, sometimes it's a bit less. As I say, we didn't, these parts were not part of the policy of the journal, and we wanted to give some ideas, some guidance, or some at least signposts to resources for the authors. So we prepared this document that Mojtaba showed the first page of. It's still on OSF, so I think if you want to do some data sharing and so on, and would like to have some tips or so, that's also maybe not the best and ultimate resource ever, but at least you find some hopefully useful links to like some more elaborate guidelines. What was also like our thing, we were like, especially me, I had quite some, let's say, delays on my side that were my fault, and I do apologize to those involved in those papers that had these delays. But in the end, we wanted to somehow promote the papers, and we didn't want to have that have already been accepted, and we didn't want the authors like to wait, as like JNC was at the time not sharing author accepted manuscript or like online advanced publication. It was just like publishing the whole issue. So we had like one more extra thing that is a repository within this OSF project, where we put all the accepted manuscripts. We were also sharing it as much as we could via social media and so on, so that the authors could already kind of get the credit if they wanted to use it for whatever reasons, like dissertation, promotion, whatever, that there was kind of external record rather than only we are pleased to accept email, right? So that was something we did at the time. And the other one, which was probably the most work and the most discussions that we had, was the open review reports. That is like the history of the peer review that is also published and included along the papers. This is something which was not part of the JNC policy, and it's, I guess, still not there. Several journals are like taking this policy, and but there are of course like conflicting opinions on whether it's good and like which kind of whatever option or version of this policy should be implemented. We just decided that we try, and we got like agreement from the JNC under the condition that everyone involved needs to agree. That is both the reviewers and the authors. And even if the reviewers signed the reviews, their identity would not be revealed in the like shared document. So that was kind of a result of the discussion with the JNC editorial board at the time. And yeah, that's it. We have it. But again, it costed also us quite some work, both when like setting up the process and also like preparing the documents. And also with like inviting the commentaries and so on, it's also something that was not there in JNC in general. Like you can submit a commentary there, but there is no like that someone invites you to write one. Like so, since then JNC evolved. For instance, they have the option to share author accepted manuscripts, which is great. But at the same time, I had a feeling that it caused some confusion with our special issue, in a sense that we were sharing them on the OSF. Then JNC was sharing them somewhere. We ended up with kind of posting more versions of author accepted manuscript that would be necessary, but kind of this one, this option has been included more or less when we were in the middle, and some papers have been already on the OSF that we shared. So we just continued, and that's kind of how it ended up to be. And also, like we didn't plan it, but also since then, JNC adopted the open science badges. So now you have even more credit for, I don't know, sharing your data, materials, and so on. And luckily, the papers from special issue already have the badges. So that's it. And then, if you could go on. So this is more or less how every paper looks like at the very end. So you have this information about the data set, about the supplementary materials, and at the very bottom you can see also hosted on the JNC repository the peer review history. We thought of it as like some kind of cool documentation of how this paper evolved, how it changed. Also, a thing, for instance, to be considered if anyone decides to discuss such a special issue, such a paper in a seminar or so, that you also have kind of some input, what the reviewers were kind of commenting on, what the reviewers might have missed or whatever. That's nice, and also kind of broadening the kind of knowledge or so that you have when you are like writing, for instance, the response to the reviews, or when you are reviewing a paper yourself. So in that sense, we thought it would be like a valuable resource, and therefore we were kind of pushing to have it. Yeah, and I think I hand it over now. Yeah.
Okay, so one question is whether it's worth doing that or to be involved. So let's start to the involvement as an author. So it has some pros, which is like, first, the paper will be among other works on the same topic. This helps to be seen or to be easier founded by people. So particularly if we are not active or we haven't been active in a field before, and people may not necessarily go and Google our name, but using, submitting work there would help us to be visible. It would set a kind of restricted deadline for ourselves and for our supervisors. It's good because there are some statistics showing about, like, for example, there was a US funding organization showing that, after they lifted the restricted deadline for grant submission, there was a kind of more than 50% drop in the submission. So here is a kind of the other way around. Basically, if there is no deadline, we may say, well, there's no deadline, we just submit it next week or next month and so on. But having sort of deadline will somehow encourage or pushes us to submit our work to be published earlier. And also, if we can make it like relevant to that topic, the probability of getting desk reject is much lower than regular submission. But on the other hand, usually we submit our work very last time, right? So this means that we don't necessarily have time, if that's important for us, to try high impact journals. So we may miss that chance, let's say. And after publication, we might think, well, if I had time, I could try X and Z journal before this submitting here. And some people are like claiming that it's like overvalued, because in this time of online publication, you can just submit and it will be published. So it's not really needed to initiate any special issue or contribute necessarily there. And the last point is, like, they are all mostly published online. So we don't necessarily have the chance of asking for printed booklet of the papers to archive for ourselves. To be involved as a reviewer, well, it's more or less similar to reviewing regular paper, but it has also, at least this is something like for myself, I would say, it's a kind of good feeling that you feel that you belong to a community and in society. Even without contributing as an author, you have been asked to review a paper for that work. So it's kind of good feeling, I would say. The downside is, well, similar to other reviews. Basically, it needs time commitment, and but however, it's more time restricted because usually there's kind of time plan for special issues, and they want the editor, they want to stick to the time plan, as we did, as you saw already. So you cannot really play around the deadline that much. And also it's like sometimes people, because it's usually from society, you are invited when you're overwhelmed with many other things. You are invited to review by some editors that you know from the society, and sometimes it's like difficult to decline those, and you have to take it. But as an editor, I think we think it's great. It's a great opportunity to gain experience as an editor, because that would provide a new perspective, the way to look into the publication process, which is I would say different from different angles as reviewer or author of the paper. It's quite valuable to see what people are looking for, what's important to be highlighted, and so on. This is like being for example, in a search committee for a position for hiring. You know, you will see the behind the camera basically, and also it helps us to be more visible in a field. For example, in this case, each of us handled like 6-7 papers. So you will be in contact with, you know, with the reviewers, a couple of reviewers, some decline, some accept, and so on. It's a constant communication with people in a field, and also the authors of the papers. So I would say around 30-40 people we have been in, you know, constant communication in 1.5 years about, which is good. You know, people would see you, that would help you to be promoted, whatever promotion it is in a field. And you will have the freedom to, you know, to test new solutions or bring something new. This is what we did as well, that luckily we could be influential in our journal, the journal of our society. And also you have the chance of writing editorial, and sometimes it could be like quite informative, and could turn to be one of your best papers that you are really proud of. However, the downside is the time commitment. As I said, you cannot foresee everything, right? It's difficult to sometimes to allocate enough time for those. Sometimes it happened to us, and I think that's quite common, I would say. Even if your early career, you are not overwhelmed with teaching and all those administration, but still. And also, if you are bringing something new, like for example, in our case, open review reports. So it was really time consuming to prepare all those reports, because you have to put them together. You have to go over all those as regard the, you know, the structure, formatting, all those details, which are like time consuming, and also like reviewing extra papers, or let's say commentary. Here it was like we limited to 1,000 words, but still, you know, you have to read it. You ask. So both of us read all those commentaries to ensure that we are, you know, we agree about all those details. Otherwise, we got back to the authors. And also data sharing, all these things that, you know, all these, particularly about like open science practices, they need time and effort. And in the end, you cannot really accept all the works. So there are some certain times that you have to decide. You cannot make everyone happy, but you have to make your decision based on your read. And this needs, again, extra effort. And of course, this is like quite normal for any editorial role that you might take or you might have. But here, that might be one of your first editorial roles that you might have by initiating a special issue. So you have to take those things, keep them in mind. Okay, I will hand it over back to Krzysztof. You are muted, Krzysztof.
Yeah, so now we wanted to present a sort of like a to-do list of how to do a special issue, and of course, like questions or comments or anything like that are very, very encouraged, and just like feel free to ask. Yeah, so first of all, just at the beginning, especially, don't do it alone. At best, if you have never edited a paper, it's good to have someone else on board, and it's good to have at least some like editorial experience on board. So like in our case, we were kind of fresh in the business on one hand. On the other hand, I had some very limited editorial experience with another special issue that we hosted with like more experienced colleagues sometime before, and also like both of us become like associate editors of JNC more or less at the same time, and we also handled like 1 or 2 papers at the time, so we had kind of clue of how does that work. But so that would be our probably tip, to have at least a little bit experience with like one of you who, for instance, like co-hosted a special issue with some like more senior people to have this sort of experience at the beginning. Again, a second thing, be mindful about the scope. So there is this big trade-off between staying focused about the topic, but also ensuring that there would be enough contributions from the specific topic. Because of course it's nice to be focused, but on the other hand, if you end up that there are like, I don't know, 5 groups working on this topic and 3 of them like declined you, and you end up with 2 papers, and it's kind of problematic. So that's that requires some thinking, let's say. Aim high with the journal. I mean, the sky is the limit. There are several journals which are kind of now, let's say, aggressively inviting people to host special issues with them, which is like nothing bad on the one hand. On the other hand, if you think that, okay, I want to commit and do a special issue, then maybe it's just worth trying with the journal that you have been kind of dreaming of before. And if they decline, you can use those like invitations, which come from some journals that I won't name now, but you probably all heard about these stories. So that's kind of thing. And once a good friend of mine in a different context, when I was like thinking whether I should take my chance with something that I didn't know that works out or not, she just told me that in the worst case scenario, they would say no. So the output would be exactly the same as I didn't ask in the first place. And this kind of really stick to me, in a sense that in such situations, I just decide to try, and yeah, well, if they say no, the output is exactly as if I didn't ask. And at least to our knowledge, there are no universal guidelines on how to propose the special issue. I mean, on the journal website, you have information how to submit a paper, usually, and kind of like longish thing of like guidelines, ideas, whatever requirements. Here, usually you don't have such a thing, so it's best to contact the editor-in-chief kind of semi-informally and ask how it works. So yeah, if you ask me, I would say that probably it's good to have the like your CV plus a brief outline of the special issue that you would like to do, kind of justification on why, and then in one case the editors would say, okay, it's not for us, we don't want it, go away, fine. Or they would like to, or they say, okay, we are kind of preliminarily interested or tentatively interested in this topic. just please provide this, and that, come back to us, and then we would make the decision with the editorial board. This, and that can be, for instance, that some journals ask for a list of contributors. But like about this in a second. Then what is really important is to really get along well with your contact person on the publisher side and the responsible editor. So here, I think we couldn't like be more grateful to like the person from the JNC, Judith, who was our kind of contact person there. She was super helpful with all the things and very, very friendly. So that was amazing. And we also got really lots of support from actually 3 chief editors of JNC. So it was John Toes at the very beginning. Then Wim Fias was also helping us a lot during the special issue, like most of the time. And then when it was kind of wrapping up and close to publication, it was Andre Knops, who was also very helpful and supportive. So yeah, it's important to really get along with these people well. And yeah, not always it goes like this, especially with super big journals. You have someone from the whatever editorial office, which might be also overwhelmed with other tasks. But in general, it's good to make kind of, yeah, working relationship with them. And then what is really important is to agree on the rules. So first of all, it needs to be kind of agreed with the editorial office and the editor-in-chief. Sometimes they want pre-submissions, that is, people kind of send some sort of abstracts or so. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes journals go for open call, that is, that even if they ask you for a list of contributors, they would say that, okay, yeah, well, we know that we have whatever 7 groups interested in submitting a paper, great. Then it makes sense to whatever engage in the special issue, we do it. But as soon as we accept it, we would post the announcement on the website, and then like everyone is allowed to contribute. This is like one way that some journals do. Some journals only do contributions by invitation. That is, you provide a list of authors and you say, okay, I want to do a special issue on the topic X. And then I have this whatever 10 or 15 people who are contributing the papers. And then the journal says, okay, that's the list of contributors. We invite them. The papers are normally peer reviewed and so on. So they might be also well rejected. However, these are like the 2 modes that different journals operate, and it's really important to kind of agree in advance about the rules here. Yeah. Then agree on the timeline. First of all, with yourself, then with the journal. Here for our special issue, like Wim was very, very helpful in kind of guiding us on how to do it, that it makes sense. It should be like not too long on one hand, but also not too tight. And then probably you kind of need to find the sweet spot between one and the other. However, you need to build in some flexibility when it comes to deadlines. Like this, if you ask me about anything that is certain about special issue, is that some people at some point will ask you for deadline extensions. And like, it's good to kind of be ready with that. And maybe like, even if you want to do, if you have some sort of time restrictions, to be a little bit psychotic, that you set up the deadline a month before, and then you kind of build in this option that people know that, okay, this is the deadline, but in a case, you can just kind of postpone it by 1 month, and it kind of doesn't disturb your timeline dramatically. The stories actually depend really a lot on the publishing mode of the journal, because if the articles are published ahead of the whole issue being out, it's not so much a problem, because kind of like the articles are published on acceptance, and like the authors get their credit, they can whatever show it in their progress reports, dissertation defense, whatever they needed to. And there is no problem that we are kind of waiting for the slowest link of the chain, right? However, when it works in a way that the whole issue is out at the same time, then then it's getting more critical, because if you have a special issue that you set up the deadline in 3 years, and then people say, okay, yeah, well, I submit my paper because I have been already like halfway through writing it. I submit it in a month, and then it's accepted, but then it could only have a status of whatever, accepted in principle or whatever for 3 years. It kind of doesn't help that much. And some people, even in the time of preprints and like accepted author manuscripts and stuff, would like to have these papers kind of out on the journal website with a nice layout and so on. So that's kind of important. Then be ready that some extra things do emerge and you need to take care of them. Some, I don't know, some problems with proofreading at the end, or like things just come, and just be ready for that. Probably the closer to the like issue being out, the likelihood of some like unforeseen issues increases. Also, when planning for the timeline, it's important whether you kind of incorporate both regular papers and registered reports, because then like putting this time plan together is getting kind of tricky. We kind of managed to, in our complicated time plan, that we had timeline for registered reports and for like regular papers. This didn't work because we didn't have registered reports, and the regular timeline also wasn't very like airtight, in a sense of like when the special issue was out in the end. But this is something to consider when you think of proposing a special issue. And then think of some tools to manage the project, especially if the co-editors are not at the same institution. We had the OSF, but it could probably well be, I don't know, Dropbox folder, Google Drive folder, or whatever, but have like a good space to keep all the documents in place. Yeah, make your special issue visible. Use social media. You can advertise on conferences. We also did it in Ottawa, as some of you might remember. Like QR codes are cool. Like this is something that is is free. You can whatever make a flyer or so with the special issue, and I think that's nice. You can also just reach out to colleagues and to like big names in the field that to ensure that they are aware of the initiative. Yeah, next. Yeah, seeking reviewers. That's also kind of probably the bulk of the work for the editor, to find the reviewers. Yeah, it's good to try with the big names, at least sometimes, but not only, certainly. It's nice to have some diversity for various reasons. And also the experience from this special issue and from some other is that if you reach out to like ECRs, it's usually very, very good. Because first of all, they do a great job. It's kind of also something new to them, and they are kind of maybe less overwhelmed with other stuff. And they are also more likely to agree because it's something also fairly kind of new to them. And they also kind of gain some experience. So it's kind of, there are of course like big ethical debates about whether it's like fair or and stuff like that. But this is how things work. And like if you ask me, I think that as like ECR, you should gain some reviewing experience in any case. So that would be my take on it. And I think also like ensuring that they also feel free to say no is kind of yeah, important as always. When inviting people, that's also a bit tricky here. It's usually good to send a little bit more invitations that you need, so not much more. If you are happy with 2 reviews, my take would be to send 3 invitations, because then in a case that it takes maybe a few days or so to kind of for people to respond, you usually have at least 1 person who declines. And then you are set. If you send like 2 invitations and then you wait a week and one of them replies after 3 days that no, and the other one doesn't reply at all, then you are kind of ending up after a week at the place where you have been at the very beginning. So you need to start like searching again. So in that sense, it's safer. There have been some very rare events that people like invited five reviewers and then suddenly all 5 agreed. Usually it's not so much of a problem, because if you write someone that like, yeah, thanks so much for agreeing. Actually, in the meantime, we managed to get like enough reviewers. If you really like to review this paper, just you are very welcome to. But But if you are busy with other stuff, it would be enough. It would be fine if you didn't do it. Probably no one would be angry or upset, but rather happy that they have like one paper fewer to review. So that's, again, just subjective, let's say, recommendation. Maybe someone disagrees. I'm also open to like discussion to this one. And also with this, like whatever Dropbox folder or so, what we had in our OSF was kind of coordinating the reviewing there. So we had like a list of submissions, and we listed all the reviewers that have been invited to review these papers. And it's also quite helpful so that you don't end up with like spamming the same person with like whatever 2 or 3 invitations to review papers at the same time from the same special issue, because like all 3 editors thought that it makes perfect sense to invite this person to review something. So that's kind of important, I think. And yeah, it's good to give some time and effort to write the editorial and like try to go a little bit beyond. We are pleased to present the issue with N papers and continuing with like 1-sentence summary of each of them, because then also not all the journals are quite happy with such special issues, with such, editorials, because they kind of don't bring much. And it's good to propose, I don't know, some sort of synthesis or something. I don't say that our editorial is like particularly amazing in that case, but yeah, at least we tried not to just kind of summarize each paper in 1 sentence, but kind of add something or kind of summarize or whatever. Yeah, and then is it all or? Yeah, so this is how we kind of kept informing about or updating about the special issue and progress. So when papers have been accepted, to give some kind of audience, we were posting Twitter updates with the links, and we had this one. This is the example of QR code. It's super easy to generate them. This one is actually directing to the website of to the OSF of the special issue. And I think that's it. Yeah. Yes, and like the great thanks to John, Wim, Andre, like the editors of JNC, Judith, who was the person responsible on the side of the publisher, and also to all the reviewers and also all the authors who contributed, and several of them are here. So thanks so much again for all your great contributions.
Any question, comments, remarks, discussion? If anyone wants any document that they cannot find on OSF of this special issue, feel free to drop us an email. We will be happy to share any documents that we had, including like the first, let's say, initiation idea that we drafted, or email communication, or whatever that you might find helpful. We will be happy to share them.
I have a question. Krzysztof and Mojtaba, thank you so much for putting this all together. I think it does a lot for the community, and it's really a big effort that you did. So that's fantastic. Thanks. And this is maybe an unfair question, but after all of this work and going through it all, is there anything that you look back and you're like, I think I would do this a little bit differently next time, to either make it easier on yourself, or if you were like, oh, next time I could do this type of thing with this special issue that you got excited about that you didn't have a chance to do. So not necessarily that you have to change something, but.
That's a great question, actually. Honestly, nothing. Well, if you ask me on that time, I would say we were so enthusiastic about all those open science practices that we, implemented there, but it needed really so much time commitment. So, but in the end, I'm very happy that we did that, because I think like there are some unique parts of this For example, that open review report, you know, would be very helpful for early career researcher, and commentary, all those things, I would say, well, sometimes, being honest, the journey was quite fun, but not always, for myself at least, being honest. Because sometimes you have something that, for example, your revision, you have to work on that. You have some other commitments, and at the same time, you feel really responsible for, you know, for people because they want to be graduated. They want to apply for jobs and all those things. It's a kind of pressure sometimes, but it's there. You cannot do anything with that. I don't know. I have nothing in mind. Krzysztof, I don't know whether you have something not working.
Well, I would certainly not allow such delays on my side, and that's kind of, yeah, my fault, and I feel kind of still guilty about it. So that's certainly a thing. And then other than that, yeah, I think like now it would be simpler with the with the process, because also the editorial platform of JNC after the update is just much nicer, and before it was like real pain to kind of operate it. And also we made several kind of fuck ups on the way, because it's like that, for instance, I thought that it was sent for copy editing, but it wasn't, and we learned like quite later about it, because I clicked, I think, save, but I didn't click send, or the other way around, that I was just not aware. And it was like fairly far away from being intuitive, and also there was not so much documentation on how this open access platform works. The newer edition is much nicer, but like the special issue was still kind of embedded into the old ones. So even if the platform rolled over to the new one, the special issue was still in the legacy version. So that's kind of it. And yeah, well, I don't know. Nothing comes to my mind like anything obvious, in a sense that, yeah.
Yes.
Hello, this is Albi Henning. Can I comment, Mojtaba and Krzysztof?
Of course.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, hello. I'm an editor of, what shall I say, great age, great experience, different journals. And I must say, I am truly invigorated and encouraged by the way you did things. It was systematic. The end result was really readable. And I am very sorry that none of us in our part of the world contributed to this special issue. So well done, and thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Albi. Hopefully next time. So I'm sure that people in this call will initiate something soon. Hopefully, that we can contribute all.
Yeah, and it's like not that scary in the end. I mean, what is, yeah, if I may also share kind of experience with this one, it's not only the kind of bulk of the work, in a sense that probably if you just count the hours, yeah, well, it's a lot, but it's not so much. But the thing of like how much it is spread and scattered, that for instance, you have the submission, you need to do some initial checks, whatever, give some read to it, invite the reviewers, then you wait for, I don't know, some days until you realize whether the reviewers are there or not, then maybe invite some other, and then suddenly the reviews come, then you need to whatever read it through and so on. So the kind of work is also like, let's say, it's spread in a way that it's really hard to predict and plan in advance, because you just kind of never know when it comes in. So that's kind of thing. But on the other hand, it's, yeah, well, it's a lot, but it's not yeah, exceptional. And also kind of the feeling when it was out on the website, it was like really rewarding. Like despite the objective quality, for me, it was like, wow, it's there finally.
And also what I can add is that probably as an early career researcher, we are not being invited to join editorial board of the journals, but this sort of initiation would again, you know, promote, is kind of promoting us to be more visible, to be invited to join editorial boards, because this, like, you know, people will trust you if they see that you handled a special issue successfully. I personally highly recommend it, doing that.
Yeah. Well, other point, just like to add, maybe, I mean, having done that was great experience and so on. However, if you ask me whether I would at any foreseeable future like to take the role of like editor-in-chief of any journal, I would be, let's say, hesitant, at least. Like, I mean, it's also kind of a good experience because it's kind of like still a limited thing and so on. Whether if you're planning for your career, whether you really want to be an editor at some point, whether you want to serve this, or you're kind of more happy with like being a reviewer to a papers, right? It's like not every role is for everyone, and certainly a person who is like more organized than I am would be much better editor than I am, in a sense. And it was also kind of revealing experience that, yeah, well, special issue, yes, it's fun, it's lots of work, but it's kind of limited. But like being the editor on kind of rolling basis, probably not for me, at least not now. And it's also kind of, yeah, well, you just are better informed what you wish for in your career and so on. So I think it's also good in that sense.
Great, thank you guys so much. Does anyone else have any more questions or any last thoughts?
Hans-Christoph Nurkai,
Hi.
without you today. As regards early career researcher, what do you think is the experience you should have before you edit a special issue? Because I would say at least you should have some experience in publishing and reviewing. You know, I'm just saying that not to be mistaken that they wrote a new PhDs there who just started your PhD. So it's certainly not something, in my view, of course, which you should do if you are at the beginning of your PhD and you have no experience yet with publishing and reviewing. So at which stage you would recommend doing special issue, considering all the things you have to do? I mean, I generally think it's always good to be earlier, but if you would be too early with too little experience, I think there is a big chance that you get overwhelmed, especially when it gets critical. I mean, as long as it's positive, you accept the paper, everybody's happy, it's always easy. The hard part comes if you reject papers, either from big names, which think, oh, what is this Soltanlou guy doing? He has not even half as much paper as I. He rejected my paper, which is brilliant. So I had it when I was a postdoc, that we got some fire for rejecting papers of then big names. And you have to be prepared for that can happen, of course. And of course, also you need some distance. I think, especially if you have to reject papers of, you know, people you are close to scientifically and also from conferences personally, because this is not what an editorial job is about. If the paper is not good and the reviewer have points that can't be corrected, then it is like it is. Then you have to reject papers, even if you generally value people in their work. So then this is, of course, also, in my view, easier if you're a little bit longer in the business and a little bit more senior. So I personally would not advise taking a special issue too early, but I would advise, you know, when you come in your postdoc phase and you have some experience, to do it not only when you are after 10 years in the business or 20, but I think some years reviewing and editing and previewing and publishing would be good.
Yeah.
Great points, Satsi. 100% agree. Yeah, it shouldn't be too early. And also, I honestly don't think that journals would accept it, you know, offers by very junior, because in the end, you're, as we did, like you have to share your CV with them. They will go through your CVs looking whether, you know, and also you should feel confident by having, let's say, at least quite a few review experience. reviewing some papers before and some publications. Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like in our case, if you like want to know, it was like, for me, it was, I think, 3.5 years post my PhD. In case of Mojtaba, probably quite similar. Also, like, given the time spent, let's say, in research, yeah, it was kind of, yeah, fairly similar, I guess. And then, yeah, we have reviewed some papers before, quite some. Yeah, and that's really the hardest part, is really that you need to at some point make the decision that you know that, okay, the authors have like one kind of opinion or so. They did some revisions. Like one of the reviewers is delighted, the other one is still not convinced and says reject. And then there are those moments when you kind of need to make the decision, and in the end take the responsibility for the decision in the long run. So that's kind of thing that you need to be ready to do, and probably this like few years of experience is something that would help you to take this responsibility, if that makes sense.
All right, we are over time. So thank you guys both so much for this. This was great. And I think Andy said it great. You really moved our field forward, and we are all very thankful for it. So thank you for this talk, and thank you for everything that you've done.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you so much again for inviting us for this time. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.